Today I want to share a story with you about a dog named Bobby. Back in the winter of 1923, Bobby's owners, the Brazier family, struck out on a cross-country trip from the state of Oregon to the state of Indiana where the husband's family lived. And while there in Indiana, Bobby, the dog, was chased away by some other stray dogs and he went missing. So for a whole week, for an entire week, the Brazier family searched for their little dog and even placed ads in the local newspaper. And finally, this broken-hearted family gave up and headed back for home in Oregon. But 6 months later, after he went missing in Indiana, someone spotted a thin, worn-out dog walking down the sidewalk of Silverton, Oregon, the hometown of the Brazier family. They said his fur was matted and his paws were even worn down to the raw flesh. But this 3-year-old little dog, Bobby, had walked almost 2,800 miles to get back home. And so someone went and notified the Brazier family, and when Bobby saw them coming down the sidewalk, onlookers said that even though he was so tired, he went berserk with excitement and joy at being reunited with his family. And it was later determined that Bobby would have crossed rivers and even mountain ranges in the middle of winter just to get back home. And his story quickly spread nationwide, and later on he was also a guest of honor at a big event where over 40,000 people stood in line to see him. And I thought this was funny. It brought a smile to me. It said his hometown even granted a leash law exemption that allowed him to roam freely for the rest of his life. So I'm sure the town officials thought, if it's worth coming home 2,800 miles, I think we can give him an exemption to roam in his own hometown freely. But now, what prompted this seemingly ordinary dog to do something so extraordinary? And I believe if we could climb in his brain, his little brain, the dominant thought would have been, in this little dog's mind would have been, I'm heading for home. This place that I'm in right now is not my home. I'm heading for home. And Hebrews chapter 11, it's one of my favorite passages in the Bible, and it's often referred to as the faith chapter. But tucked in the middle, there's a nugget of truth that we can all identify with. And in talking about the heroes of faith, Enoch, Noah, and Abraham, let's read verse 13. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 13. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. Now, with today's devotion, I felt like I needed to speak to someone who feels weary right now from your journey, and you may even feel like a stranger to those around you because no one truly understands what you're going through. Well, let me give you an encouraging reminder that you're going through this. You're not staying here. This place in your life, it can feel so permanent. But I need to remind you again, you're not home yet. And I'm not going to pretend that this thing that you're up against, this mountain in your life is easy to climb. Sometimes it feels completely overwhelming just to take another step. I've been there many times myself. The battles that I've faced over the years with depression, anxiety, it's very real. It's very overwhelming in those times. But in faith, we have to keep walking because just like the heroes of faith that we just read about, we're desiring a better country, a better place to call home. And I thought this was interesting in that story about Bobby that we talked about earlier. He had a different collar around his neck when he arrived back home. So in other words, someone else had tried to claim ownership of him during his journey. And today, you may have something attached to you on your journey home that says anxiety or depression, disease. You can fill in the blank there of what you're going through today. The enemy is trying his best to claim ownership of your mind and your spirit. But again, let me remind you that this place that you're in today, this is not home. And for those of you that follow our music ministry, I'm sure that you've no doubt heard us sing a song called Don't Fear the Mountain. So in closing, I want to share those lyrics with you today and encourage you on your journey home. Verse 1 says, there's no way around it, and it looks so high. You're staring at a mountain that you know you must climb. Your steps have grown weary, and your heart's filled with dread. Listen, there is nothing behind you worth turning around, for home is up ahead. And the chorus says, don't fear the mountain, because that's the way home. All of heaven is waiting at the end of the road. God said, listen, God said you can make it. So keep pressing on. Don't fear the mountain, because that's the way home. And verse 2 says, His grace, God's grace, is sufficient. Though the road gets so steep, just over the next hill, the home lights you'll see. So don't be discouraged and don't fear the climb. And listen, you're going to make it all the way home, for He's right by your side. With every step you take, child of God, He is right by your side. You're not in this place alone. That's the difference between that dog Bobby and you today as a Christian. Bobby was alone in his trip back home. He had to find his way alone, but thank God we have a Savior. We have a friend who's always right beside us every step of the way. So be encouraged today. I feel so strongly to tell somebody that. Be encouraged today. Just keep taking another step, day by day, step by step. That's how we make it home. And I know that the journey itself can be so overwhelming. You think, how can I get from here to there? But all God's asking out of us is just to take another step. And you weren't meant to stay here. I can't emphasize that enough. This place that you're in of discouragement, if it's depression, if it's anxiety, whatever the case may be, you weren't meant to stay here. So can I encourage you to get up and just keep walking? Because listen, there is a great reward waiting for you if you'll just keep heading for home.